Hey, it's Friday, May 5th. That means it's time to deploy. I'm joined here with Jim. How are you, sir?
Yeah, really good, man. Glad it's Friday. Looking forward to all the news in the show today.
How was
Yeah,
your week?
yeah, good as usual. Just deep in the Octopus Deploy pipelines, trying to work out how to improve it. I think we've got some news on some of that stuff today. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll talk a lot about that. So let's start off with the news from Octopus. And through the magic of software, I'll switch over. All right. Happy May the 4th be with you, Star Wars Day. You may have noticed on our Twitter feed, we've published a little updated banner and our emoji, or rather our icon there. So a few of us like the Star Wars sort of thing. So yeah, just a little thing that you may have seen. Anyways, moving on with the real
I
news.
had to restrain myself from making lightsaber noises then.
That's right. So we've introduced a new feature called Step Retries. I don't know if you've heard of this, but it's a new feature in Octopus 2023.2. It's available as an EAP, and what it does is it basically will automatically rerun failed steps during a deployment. So this is useful in scenarios where you're trying to do a deployment and a step is failing for a variety of reasons. Like let's say you've got a flaky network connection, or you've got file IO operations that are blocking, things like that. And in this video that was done by Shane, who's a member of our team, he kind of gave a demo of what it looks like. And as you can see, here's a step. And then inside here, there's this new section called retries. And so this will allow you to basically retry a failed step up to 3 times. And if it does fail, it will fall back to guided failure mode as well, if you want. So, but this is a feature that a lot of customers have been asking for. And so this video is up online. You can check out the feature. It's available as an EIP, as I said before. And I think a lot of customers are going to find a lot of value and usefulness out of this. This has been a long-standing feature. I don't know about you, but I know a lot of customers have been asking for this for a while.
Yeah, 100%. It's a really great iteration on solving this problem, and I think there's a lot more to come in this space as well of generally making you know deployments more reliable, easy to cope, better to cope with failure, and all that sort of stuff. And we're looking at some
Yeah.
more subtle ways of dealing with that
Ooh,
as well
another
at the
teaser.
moment. Yeah, yeah.
I love it. So we published this video up on our YouTube channel. It's entitled "Introducing Step Retry." Excuse me. So if you're at all interested, you can check out the video there. It's only about 4 minutes long, and we kind of gave a summary of what's available there. Other news: GetApp is a review app site that allows you to, based on categories, provide a ranking of various solutions out there. And I'm happy to report that Octopus is currently number one for its leaders in the DevOps space. So we are, yeah, really, really happy with this ranking. We've got a lot of really great reviews from folks. A lot of people like to obviously use our solution, and we've got a lot of great feedback there. So if you're all curious about what other people think about Octopus Deploy, you can check out our listing there up on GetApp and take a look at yeah, what's what in terms of what people are saying about us. So that's awesome. So we've had a number of updates to our roadmap. For those of you who haven't seen, this is our product roadmap. So we have a bunch of features that we've launched. Obviously, there's a huge list of things that we've shipped. There's our planned features, and then there's things that are under consideration as well. And we've added a few items here, which I just wanted to point out. So we've shipped a few things. We talked about this last week, Kubernetes object status checks during deployment. Deploy as a bicep template step, pulling tentacles over standard TCP ports, et cetera, et cetera. These are all things that have been in there. A recent addition is a redesigned tenant overview dashboard. So basically, customers have found that when looking at tenants, when they have lots of tenants and they want to see it in a number of different ways, it can be hard to get a sense of what's available there. And so we've basically redesigned the dashboard. And so really, really excited about this. I think it's going to be really interesting to see what customers think about this. So, as by way of example, this is kind of like a sort of pixelated view of what it looks like. But this is again an early mock-up. But as you can see in the dashboard, we've radically changed things so that you can now have saved filters for queries you want to run. You can see your various tenants here on the left and the various environments across on the right. And so this will give you some perspective as to how your deployments are going for tenanted deployments, which is awesome. So again, this is something that we're looking to integrate with Octopus. So if you're at all curious of finding out more about these things, maybe providing some feedback, give us a ranking. This will help drive priority. Check out our Octopus roadmap. Lots of stuff there. Yeah,
Yeah.
lots of stuff there. It's good to see. The I like this is through Product Board, of course, and I'm a huge fan of Product Board. I think it's a great tool for outlining kind of what we're thinking and also providing suggestions. So we've mentioned this before in the show. You can submit new ideas if you want, but this is a way we communicate things that are coming up on the roadmap.
Yeah, really great way to get feedback. I love it. Love it
Hmm.
when we get feedback through this.
Nice. All right, moving on. Chromium or Chrome. Chromium is the open source version of the basically the engine as well. They've been publishing a lot of stuff about passkeys, and more recently, Google has been talking a lot about this. In fact, this is actually now part of, well, there's lots of stuff that's coming, but basically what's happening is Google is basically putting a lot of weight and emphasis behind passkeys, which is basically a new way in which you can sign in without passwords. So it's essentially a mechanism that is providing capabilities like Touch ID and Face ID, which are basically more secure, easier to use, and maybe a little bit harder to hack. But this is kind of what they're talking about here in terms of the end of the password. Sorry, I was on the wrong page there. So they're talking about their support for passkeys going forward. And so, yeah, definitely, if you haven't checked out passkeys yet, they're definitely worth taking a look at because it will obviously have an impact on the sign-in experience. And so, customers who are interested in this sort of aspect of authentication should take note of this. This is an initiative, by the way, that's being driven through the FIDO Alliance, and this is like through Apple and Google and Microsoft and others to try and basically provide a, I guess the best way to describe it is the consumerization of enterprise security standards such as FIDO and WebAuthn, etc. And so, passkeys are basically a mechanism that use an API for these scenarios, like your banking, your social media, or your e-commerce. And so they're really really nice. They're really secure, really easy to use. And so Google's been kind of talking this up. And also related to that is the fact that they're talking about the famous pad lock pad icon that you see inside the browser. So this is basically an article that talks about passkeys using in the context of Google, but they also talk about how the fact that they're updating the lock icon. So that lock icon, you see this little lock icon up here in the top right hand corner or left hand corner rather. This doesn't mean anything to anyone apparently. So they've done some research on this, and they're taking a look at kind of like what people are viewing when they're viewing web pages, and no one understands what the lock icon is. They don't really look at it, nor do they care, right? Like my kids, I don't know about yours, but my kids don't really know what a web domain name is. They just know about apps and app experiences. So they need to draw attention to this, obviously. So they're proposing, and I'm curious on your
Oh
thoughts on
wow.
this. Yeah, this is the new this is the new icon that they're proposing as they talk about the shift towards HBS. What are your thoughts on this?
uh as
Okay.
no, no. What is that?
I don't know. I mean, it's been interesting to hear some of the discussion. So this is what it will look like now going forward. And the icon for the lock with connection will fall under this context. But I guess the idea here is it's sort of like settings associated with a site. So you know how you can enable certain
Mm,
device settings with a site. Typically, the way you would do that is you'd have to go over to there would be a sub aspect to the site that would appear, things like this. And then, I'm in Chrome here, obviously, the site settings aspect here.
yeah,
That's what you know, how you enable like
yeah.
the microphone, etc., things like that. So they're looking at proposing it as a site setting relative to the domain, and then putting inside there the lock icon. So
Doesn't seem to
that's
me
the
like the icon's the problem. I don't think
okay.
the icon's the problem.
Well, they're not
I mean,
proposing. They're not proposing. They're not proposing a replacement for the lock pad icon necessarily, but rather just swapping out this one to refer to site settings, I guess.
yeah, yeah, I
So
get
that's
it.
something that they're looking to do. So
I mean, at the end of
in
the
the
day,
con,
people have got to care about it more, don't they?
yes, they do.
Yeah,
They
they
do.
got to, they've got to make it something people want to care about. That's the thing that
Yeah.
needs to be surfaced. I think.
Yep.
Interesting.
Yeah. Absolutely. Kind of. somewhat related to this, and I probably should have mentioned this when we looked at the roadmap, but one of the changes that is coming, which I'll just cite here, is polling tentacles are now connecting over standard HTTP ports, or rather TCP ports. So before you, when you were setting up tentacles, I know this is kind of jumping all over the place, but it is related to SSL and HPS. So before, when you were connecting polling tentacles, you would have to connect via 10943, port 10943. It's a well-known port. It's actually in Wikipedia, believe it or not, for Octopus. And now what we've done is we've changed this so that polling tentacles can now communicate with server via standard 443 SSL ports. So that's something that's worth mentioning. But I mentioned that in that context because obviously when we're talking SSL, HPS, lock
We want
pads,
we
etc.
want that lock icon.
That's right. We want the
Yeah.
lock icon. In this case, though, it's obviously for communicating through polling tentacles. But the idea is still the same. We've got to make sure that we surface this information in a broad way and make it a little bit easier for people to understand. And so this and passkeys and other things obviously is a welcome improvement. And so I'm encouraged by this. And I think that the more I read about passkeys and the more that their use is described, and it's great for the consumer or user. And I think that it's going to be a good thing going forward.
Yeah, I think the user experience around it is heaps better too, right? Like, so
Yeah.
it's all gonna be better once we get there.
Yeah, and it's like it's good because also one password and LastPass and all these other vendors, the need for that kind of diminishes a little bit. I mean, it won't entirely go away. I'll still need it for other things, but they talk about how having a password manager probably will start to diminish so much, and then it helps you mitigate against other types of attacks that typically can happen. Reusing passwords, etc. So I think this is a good thing. Moving along, Angular 16. Have you used Angular before?
I have. I try
Yeah.
to avoid it, to be honest.
Okay. I've dabbled in Angular a number of times.
Yeah.
I remember a few years ago was the whole React versus Angular versus Vue debates. And so Angular 16 is now available. I didn't realize we were up to version 16 already. I remember using it back in V6 days, V4 days.
Yeah.
But now we're up
Yeah.
to 16, and so yeah, great to see the Angular team is still kicking goals. I mean, this is like the Google show today. I don't know what's going on, but
Yeah, totally.
yeah. So they've basically moved towards Angular 16, and so a few changes that have gone into this. NGCC is gone. So basically, when they moved from their old, I'm dating myself now. Back in like V9, um, there was the old Vue engine, and then they moved to Ivy, and then NGCC was required as part of that. That was the compatibility compiler for Angular. NG is the compiler, so NGCC is the Angular compatibility compiler. And so they moved away from that. There's some other changes that are listed in here. For example, like binding router information to component inputs is another thing that's changed. They've made changes to things like take until destroy and destroy ref for basically more of a functional approach when targeting events. And there's also I read in here there was also a required input. So in React and in other frameworks, you can pass props to components, and so you can mark these props as required, not compiled, but required. And if they're not passed, then TypeScript will generate an error. And so this was a feature that was missed in Angular. So they talk about that in here.
Oh, that's good. That was one of the reasons
Yeah.
I'd like to avoid it, to be honest.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
Not being
Uh,
have sort of compile safe components was a real tricky one.
Yeah, yeah. So signals is another one that, like, if you've been doing anything with Angular, you know about signals. So signals are basically a new reactive primitive. It's through Angular, and it basically provides a framework for tracking changes to a model. And so signals will give you an API and a framework for doing this, and it allows you to make your code really simple, and it allows you to be highly reactive, which is one of the benefits, obviously, of other frameworks. And there's not a lot it's not a lot of complexity to it. It's pretty easy to understand when taking a look at it. So, anyways, these and other changes have gone into Angular 16, and so if you're at all interested, you could read this blog post and get up to speed and bump your dependencies and start using it today. These are good. I like these summary videos. They're a great way to kind of get the gist of what's available in Angular. And so I'm a big fan in terms of doing. They're just a lot of work. I find it's like a lot of
Yeah.
work to get all the demos set up, et cetera, et cetera. But this is good to see. So if you're all interested, watch the video, read the blog post, and you'll be good to go. Temporal.net, deterministic workflow authoring in .NET. Were you a fan? Did you ever use Windows Workflow Foundation?
I did not. Did
Okay.
not.
Yeah. So a temporal workflow is code that is executed in a durable, reliable, and scalable way. Today, temporal allows you to write workflows in Go, Java, Python, TypeScript, and more. You can now add .NET to the list. And with the new alpha release of the .NET SDK, while this post is focused on .NET, C Sharp, any .NET language will work. So this is from the folks over at Temporal. They basically provide this mechanism of let's see here if I can find the appropriate line here. So, oh god, I'm getting into it now. So, basically, these are the workflows. This is a workflow. Like I'm trying to provide the view here. So, workflow executions in code, et cetera, et cetera. And so now they're providing a binding, if you will, to .NET. And so
Is
now
this
you can do this.
is this going to be similar to like durable functions in Azure, where you actually have a workflow engine operating at the code level, and you can sort of resume different bits of code? Is that what's going on here?
There's definitely a workflow element to this, whether or not
Yeah.
it's well, I'm assuming workflows by
Yeah.
their very nature have to be durable in some
Yeah.
capacity. So that's what they're providing here, and so you can see many of the concepts and the lexicon here map almost one to one to what you see in Windows Workflow Foundation. So an
Yeah. Right.
activity, a workflow, workers is where I think you're talking about in terms of who's performing the execution. And then they talk about durability, I think, later on. But the idea here is, so we have a purchase, and then we have activities, and then we have an HTTP
Okay.
client, because of course, why not? And then we have a task, so we have an async task, and then we execute a call here, and then we ensure success, and then we throw
Okay.
if otherwise.
So
And
it is
so
a
this
framework.
is,
It is a
yeah.
framework. It's not a. It's not a. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. And so implementing a workflow, you basically tag it with the attribute workflow. And then we define this as our workflow run. And we have a signal and a query as well. And then in our run, we can go ahead and perform work and then communicate that success back to the receiver after the fact. So the signature here, run as async, run async. We have an incoming purchase. We return a task with a purchase status associated with it. So purchase status is an enum. It's either pending, confirmed, canceled, or completed. So typical sort of workflow scenario. And I would imagine you could probably stitch these together, etc., execute them, etc., etc. And so this is now a language binding that the folks have at Temporal now have available for you to use. So language binding for .NET, which is great.
Awesome.
I have not used it. I don't know much about it. I know it's kind of like helpful for
Look at all
writing
those
this sort of
logos though.
logic. I know.
Netflix.
I like logos.
Yeah.
Ghost. There you go. Perfect. I'm a fan, so yeah. I'll have to read more about this. I haven't. I just saw it. I was like, oh, cool. So,
Yeah. Cool.
but I've used workflow engines in the past, so there you go. Web.dev is a site provided by the Google Chrome dev advocacy team. They provide a bunch of articles there, as well as insights and etc. And this is an article I saw called "JavaScript Import Maps Are Now Supported Cross-Browser." So with import maps, supporting ES modules or ECMAScript modules now becomes a lot better. This has always been the bane of my existence. I don't know about you, but imports versus requires versus whatever other type of loader that is available in the TypeScript JavaScript world. I hate all of it. I think it's dumb. I think that I'm not waiting around for standards to get implemented. But basically, what this is, it's a new MIME type here defined. I guess not a MIME type, but I guess just type. And so it's on a script tag here, and it says type equals import map. And so you can declare this in type and inside basically a page, an HTML document. And then there you can define a object which basically lists your imports or your dependencies here, which are to a remote resource here. So this is now a mechanism that is a support across now Edge, Chrome, and Firefox. I'm assuming it's Edge. I just say Edge first to give them, a little bit of love. But if you're at all curious, you can take a look at the specifications, and you can take a look at. I think they provide context here. Yeah, this is always the way to go. So take a look. Like this is this is the chart that shows basically the various instances of browsers here, and then green means it's supported based on the version that's listed there. So yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, definitely something. Every time I go to look at it and try and every time I run into it as a problem, the landscape's changed and I have to relearn
That's right.
it.
That's
Yeah.
right. So yeah, worth checking out. And if you're at all interested, web.dev is a great resource. I mentioned this a number of times in Deploy on Friday and a variety of other shows, and they provide a number of great articles on things that you might be interested in if you're at all curious about what's happening in the web dev space. One of the things that's recently occurred is Chrome 113 has shipped, and the big thing there is WebGPU is now available. So WebGPU is a specification, a set of APIs that allow you to basically perform a variety of complex drawing application, a bunch of complex drawing applications and operations against the GPU. So it's similar to the variety of models espoused by Apple and Microsoft, etc., DirectX, Metal, etc. And so WebGPU is an API that allows you to target that. And now it ships with Chrome 113, which generally speaking means if it ships with Chrome, it's broadly available. And so it's an example of what's possible that is hardware accelerated graphics in a web context. And it's you might wonder like how does this differ from things like Canvas, for example? Can you target it with CSS, et cetera, et cetera? I don't know. I haven't actually taken a look at this to be honest. I stopped looking at like graphics on the web back in the day when like Canvas and SVG and all those animation specs came out, and WebGPU is just one more thing of those things. But sort of related to this is this post here that talks about I want to talk to you about WebGPU. And if you're at all curious, you can click on this link here. It will take you to a page that shows you whether or not your browser supports it. And so if this animates in the context of this, that means it now supports WebGPU. Of course, I'm running Chrome 113 here, so it's animating it. If we were to take a look at, say, the source, if I can inspect this, here we go. So I have a div. Inside the div, I have a canvas, which is my target for this. And then I'm targeting the various operations via WebGPU as part of that. And so, again, I'm just speculating here, but this blog post here talks a little bit about how it works underneath the covers, the sort of transforms that you can conduct. It does provide a lot of context around the history of how these things came about through graphics APIs. I'm like, yeah, I'm not interested in all this. I'm aware of all this stuff, but if you scroll to the bottom, it has this sort of complicated flow of how WebGPU, how a pixel becomes a thing via WebGPU. So it talks a little bit about that. But it's interesting stuff. Like I think that these sorts of things are goodness at the end of the day for developers who are wanting to draw complicated scenes to the viewport, which is great.
Yeah, 100%.
Hmm.
Gee, Chrome
I think
113. We were interested in Angular 16.
I know. It's like I can't keep up. So yeah, you can see here library support. So Babylon JS, Play Canvas, TensorFlow, 3JS, great library 3. That's a huge one. Some examples here of what you can do. I don't think these examples will blow you away, but it's kind of an idea of like hardware accelerated APIs available in the browser now, and so this will unlock capabilities that were probably difficult to do before. And so in a web standard compliant way, standard slash specification. Basically, it's a specification. Whether it's standard or not is anyone's guess. So you can see here, WebGPU is currently a work in progress in Firefox and Safari, and it's now available in 113, which is awesome. But I'll
Awesome.
have to take a look at this at some point. And then finally, wrapping things up, obviously Visual Studio Code. They ship all the time. So VS Code, April 2023 release or version 1.78 is now available. It's highlighted in this blog post here. It's a bit of a minor update. So accessibility improvements, new color themes, profile templates, drag and drop selector, standalone color picker. Nothing major, so to
Mm.
speak. What else we got? Drag and drop videos for markdown files, quick fixes for source control input. You scroll through here, sometimes they'll provide like an inline GIF to show you how it works. So these are some terminal improvements that have been done around accessibility. You can see some changes that have been done to the workbench. So, for example, new color themes, as I mentioned earlier. There's also the various themes that you can get online as well. Templates there. So, depending on what kind of profile you have, like I'm a data scientist, I'm a Python developer, I'm using Angular 16. help me out. So, that's available there. Glyph margin decoration improvements. These things can always be hard to these can always be hard to spot sometimes, especially in a debug context. Those things can be
Yeah.
tricky.
Yeah.
Drop selector. This is nice.
That's
So
cool.
I'm doing a little bit of markdown, so I can drag and drop that in there, and then we'll provide a context here. Sorry, I should get out of the way, and I can convert that from an absolute to a relative path, for example.
Yeah.
So there's
Nice.
things like that. Standalone color picker, whatever. I mean, that's pretty much the thing. But diff algorithm improvements, obviously, if you're doing merges and things like that, always
Yeah.
appreciated.
I'll take that.
Extensions, improved extension recommendations notifications. So before and then after, I believe. So
Hey.
yeah. So do you want to
Yeah.
install the recommended quote extension pack for Java? Or do you want to install the recommended extension? So it's kind of a summary, I guess, rather than tell me, do as I mean, not what I say sort of
Yeah.
approach. Source control. So quick fixes. So I guess a little bit of some changes there when
Spell
committing code.
checking.
Yep, spell checking. Maybe possibly integrated with Copilot if you have it enabled. So lots and lots of stuff there. So yeah, nothing major, but obviously worth keeping track of. And as mentioned in the previous show, there's the VS Code Day that just happened. All the videos are up on YouTube, and you can check it out there if you're at all curious. And that, as they say, is about it. So short and sweet, but as I
Nice.
said before, lots and lots of stuff. Keep track of the roadmap. Lots of stuff coming down the pipe. We have that new feature that we put a blog, or rather a video up about step retries in Octopus, which is great. Any final thoughts before we wrap up?
No, that was all cool stuff.
All right, short and sweet. I like it. All right, we'll see you next week.
See you guys.